15 yards, for the most receiving yards in a play all three. Calvin Johnson, better known by fans as Megatron, had one of the most intriguing careers in NFL history. Megatron was on track to becoming one of the best receivers of all time, before suddenly retiring at the age of 30 after playing only 9 seasons in the NFL. His retirement shocked the NFL world.
Yeah, man, it hurt me too. I'm a Lions fan, but I understand. And I don't get mad at nobody for saying we the worst organization ran, because honestly, our owners didn't even really care about winning. But now we going in the right direction, bro. Like, I really wish Calvin Johnson, bro, could have experienced, what I'm saying, some winning, man. Because to me, and I don't care what nobody say, Calvin Johnson is the greatest receiver of all time, bro.
While most players retire due to an injury or being too old, Johnson hung up his cleats while he was still performing at an elite level. In fact, Megatron's 1,214 yards were the most receiving yards in a player's final season in NFL history, and his 88 receptions were the second most all-time for a player's last year. Additionally, not many players retire following being named to the Pro Bowl for a 6th consecutive season. That's exactly what Johnson did in 2016. He ended his career on a high note, but how good was Calvin Johnson actually before his abrupt departure from the sport? The star wide receiver grew up in Georgia near Atlanta. From an early age, Johnson was much bigger than the average.
Listen, he made, I think, besides Odell Beckham, he made the greatest reception I ever seen in college. Go look up Calvin Johnson, Georgia Tech, crazy reception. Just go look up the Georgia Tech reception that he made. Bruh, you know what I'm talking about, and I hope they talk about it here.
Average person. In middle school, he was 6 feet tall, and by his sophomore year of high school, Johnson was 6'4". This size helped Johnson develop into not only one of the top wide receivers, but also one of the top overall high school prospects in the entire country. He was a 3-year starter for his high school's varsity team and rated as a top 10 wide receiver, top 100 overall prospect, and 5-star recruit by the majority of recruiting services. Johnson chose to stay close to home and play for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets over other national powerhouses such as Georgia, Miami, and Notre Dame. At Georgia Tech, Johnson easily adjusted to playing.
If you hear the reason, I was watching his podcast on Ha Davis. If you hear the reason why he went to Georgia Tech, he wanted to take care of his family, and he knew a lot of people that graduated from Georgia Tech, which is great jobs. And basically, when you graduate from Georgia Tech, you basically walk into a job. And the thing is crazy about Calvin Johnson is he wasn't even thinking about the NFL at this point. It ended up being, at worst, the 3rd best receiver of all time to me. Only people I think you could put over him is Moss and maybe Jerry Rice and maybe Moss. But I think he better than both of them. Jerry Rice got the story career and he got the storylines, but Calvin Johnson do got the most reception yards in a season. And look who was throwing to him. Dan Orlovsky. He had, besides Matt Stafford, he had Dan Orlovsky. He had just underwhelming quarterbacks throwing to him, bro. Now, Matt Stafford, I hold Matt Stafford to a high regard. I think he's a Hall of Famer. And I wasn't surprised that he won the championship. I knew they was. But give Calvin Johnson Joe Montana or give him Steve Young and see what he do with them.
Playing the game at the next level. In just his second career collegiate game, Megatron had 8 catches for 127 yards and 3 touchdowns in a victory over the Clemson Tigers. He finished his freshman campaign with 48 receptions for 837 yards and 8 touchdowns, which were all Georgia Tech freshman records. A nice start to his college career earned him the honor of being named to the Atlantic Coast Conference's first team and freshman All-American first team. Johnson also won ACC Rookie of the Year. He found himself on the ACC's first team again the following season, after leading the Yellow Jackets with 54 catches for 888 yards and 6 touchdowns. Additionally, Megatron was named an All-American and a semifinalist for the Fred Biletnikoff Award, which is awarded annually to the nation's top wide receiver. While Johnson's first 2 seasons of college football were impressive, his junior year catapulted him into a whole new level of stardom. He had 76 catches for 1,202 yards and 15 touchdowns that season. Those 1,202 receiving yards and 15 receiving touchdowns set single-season school records at Georgia Tech. Johnson racked up more than just a lot of yards that year, as he brought home numerous awards and honors. He was a first-team All-ACC selection for the third straight year, won ACC Player of the Year, was named a unanimous All.
He was as dominant as he was in college in the NFL, and that's what make it even more crazy. Like,
All-American and won the Biletnikoff Award. As a result of this stellar season, Johnson decided to forego his senior year at Georgia Tech to enter the NFL draft.
Fuck, 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 fuck.
Hello? Are you there? It's me. This is a little strange, but
With just 3 seasons spent as a Yellow Jacket, Johnson ranks first in school history in career receiving yards, second in catches, first in receiving touchdowns, and first in career 100-yard receiving games. Johnson was so dominant in college that he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility in 2018. Johnson was already an attractive prospect based on his size and college stats, but he added to the hype surrounding him through his performance at the NFL Combine. For a 6'5", 239-pound receiver, scouts were blown away by him running the 40-yard dash in only 4.35 seconds. His vertical and broad jumps were 42.5 and 139 inches respectively, placing him in the top 98th percentile and above for both. He demonstrated a combination of height, strength, speed, and overall athleticism that teams had never really seen before in a receiver. Because of this, Johnson was labeled a can't-miss talent and was selected by the Detroit Lions with the second overall pick in the 2007 draft. Hampered some by a lower back injury, Johnson's rookie season with the Lions was nothing special. He appeared in 15 games for Detroit and started 10 of them while totaling 48 catches for 756 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns that year. While the total numbers weren't eye-popping, averaging 15.8 yards per catch was a sign of what was to come for Megatron. Johnson's second year in the NFL was much more memorable, for good and bad reasons. Megatron had a great year for himself, with 78 receptions for 1,331
but we was trash.
yards and 12 touchdowns. He finished 5th in the league in receiving yards and led the NFL in receiving touchdowns. Johnson accomplished this on a team that went 0-16 that season. One could argue that his performance was even more impressive because of the bad team he was on and the fact that he played
Bad. Worst team all time. We was the worst team all time. I'm a Lions fan, and I'm honest. I'm very happy the last 2 years where we have been. I think we're going to make the playoffs this year, but Calvin Johnson was the only thing we had to go to watch in the 2000s, bro. In the, the late 2000s. And then we got a little better around like 2012, 2013, from like 2012 to like 2014, we got a lot better and we became a playoff team. But around this time when he first got here, his first couple years, especially this year, we were like 0-16, bro. Do y'all know how hurtful that is, man?
played with 5 different quarterbacks that year. People attributed this to the Lions' poor record. Megatron's first career Pro Bowl came in his 4th year in the league after totaling 77 catches for 1,120 yards and 12 touchdowns during the 2010 season. It was an honor that Johnson would go on to receive each season until his eventual retirement. Johnson built off of his first Pro Bowl year with a 2011 season that led to him being viewed as one of the top receivers in the game. He set career highs in all 3 major categories by amassing 96 catches, 1,681 yards, and 16 touchdowns. Johnson finished 4th in the NFL in receptions, 1st in receiving yards, and 2nd in touchdowns that season. In a Week 17 matchup with the Green Bay Packers, Megatron had 244 receiving yards, which was a career best at the time, meaning he somehow topped that performance later in his career. That year, Johnson even helped Detroit reach the playoffs for the first time since 1999. Prior to the 2012 season, Johnson signed an 8-year extension with the Lions, worth $132 million, with $60 million guaranteed, making him the highest-paid receiver in the NFL. During the same offseason, Megatron was named as the cover athlete for the Madden 13 video game. Johnson did not rest on his laurels following his performance in 2011 and exciting offseason. He managed to take his game to another level in 2012, as he led the league in receptions and receiving yards with 122 catches for 1,906.
This is the. I don't listen. I understand what Cooper Rush did. I understand, but this is the greatest receiving season, the greatest season by a receiver of all time. I don't care what nobody say, bro. I don't care. I understand Cooper Rush won the Triple Crown and everything, but come on, dog. Calvin Johnson was a different beast, bro.
64 yards. Megatron became the only player in the Super Bowl era to average over 120 yards per game in a season. And he also broke Jerry Rice's record for most receiving yards in a season. The following 3 years, Johnson
And he didn't have Joe Montana throwing to him.
was as solid as a wide receiver comes. He averaged 81 receptions for 1,261 yards and nearly 10 touchdowns over those seasons. After the 2015 season, Johnson retired from the NFL. The rumor is that he wanted the Lions to release or trade him because he was tired of losing with them, but they refused to do so. So he just retired.
That is not what happened, and that's not what he said on the podcast. I'm going to tell y'all the real reason. He said his body was too beat up, bro. You know what I'm saying? He didn't mention anything about a trade or anything. He just said his body was too beat up. But who knows? That might be true. He wanted to get traded, but I just watched the podcast where he was talking about it and why he retired. And this is a Detroit podcast. And he said his body was just too beat up.
There are also versions of the story that revolve around him retiring due to health issues. Either way, Johnson's NFL career came to a close after just 9 seasons. His 11,619 receiving yards rank third in a player's first 9 NFL seasons, with only Torrey Holt and Jerry Rice having more than him. From the time Johnson entered the league in 2007, no player had more receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, or 100-yard games than he did. Among those who have played in at least 100 career games, no player in NFL history has averaged more receiving yards per game than Johnson's 86.1. There may be some controversy surrounding his reason or decision for retiring so early in his career. There's no doubt that Calvin Johnson should be considered one of the most dynamic players of all time.
And that's facts. I think Calvin Johnson is the greatest receiver of all time. Who do you have? Jerry Rice, Moss, T.O. I mean, who do you have? Some people might have Lance Swan. Some people might have, other players. So who do you have? This been Who Is Hendo. I'm out. Peace.